So I started with only $1,000 and I turned that to over $25,000 flipping cars without even having my own dealership. But the truth is, it definitely was not an easy journey. I am not that mechanically inclined, so I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I ended up taking it to a mechanic, finding out that it was a clogged cat, so it probably needs a new catalytic converter. Did y'all hear that right there? Oh yeah. Yeah, that doesn't sound too good. And though yes, this is a great progress so far, I still have a long journey to go. I'm trying to get all the way to $100,000 by the end of 2025 so I could drop it down as a down payment on a house. So I'm only a quarter of the way there. But let's go back in time though to see exactly what I had to go through to even get to this point. So with only $1,000 to spend, just starting up with everything, I knew probably one of the best places to start had to have been a dealer-only auction like Odessa auctions. And I know you might be thinking at first, like, how do you even get into an auction like this if you don't have your own dealership? Well, don't worry. The reason why I'm able to get into auctions like that is because I'm a dealer rep under a dealership. I've helped a lot of people get into the same thing themselves as well, probably over 100 people. If you want to do that same thing yourself, I'll drop a link there so you can sign up if you want to. But if you want to know what $1,000 will buy you if you go to a dealer auction like Odessa, then I don't know either, because I haven't gotten one there, and I definitely did not start up the series like that. When I went there the first time, I literally got nothing. Everything was going for way too much of a price. And I gotta say, through this whole journey, you'll see Odessa auctions has not really been the best option for me by far. But we'll get back to that in a second. Instead, what I did was I went to ACV auctions. This is an auction that's only online, but it's also just for dealers. And I bought my first car for only $850. It was a 2002 Ford Escape. And though it did have a little defect on the right driver's side panel, it still was like a really good deal. I mean, I only had to detail it, and I quickly sold it for $1,900, making a very easy like $1,000 profit. Following right after that, what did I do? I went back to Odessa auctions, and did I have better time this time? No, nothing again. So what did I do? I went right back to ACV auctions, got my next car, and it was a Subaru Impreza. Now this also looked good overall. It did have a manual transmission, and just like the first car, it didn't have any mechanical problems to fix. So I thought it was gonna be a really quick and like easy flip as well. So I took my time cleaning it, restoring it back to its old glory. And then I went into posting it up, and then a day went by, 2 days went by, 5 days went by, a whole week went by, and I basically got nobody hitting me up about the car. And at first I really was like, I don't get what's happening. Like, this is a good price for this car. Like, I don't see what's really the issue here. But if you call what I said, it was a manual transmission. And I know, generally speaking, selling a commuter car in a manual transmission, let's say if it's like some basic Nissan Altima and manual, wouldn't usually be a good thing because there's not usually too many people that want to buy it. But I thought this was going to be different. It's a Subaru Impreza. But I don't know what I was thinking, honestly. I didn't know if I was thinking it was some WRX Impreza flying down rally racing or something. But that definitely was not this. I guess I would understand why most people probably wouldn't want it. So instead, I had to lower the price. I wanted to get like $1,000 out of it at first, but instead I had to lower it down and sell it for $2,500. I wasn't that happy about that, especially with how long it took to sell. But I mean, I got $700 profit out of it. So yes, that was kind of a bad flip overall, but I mean, at least we were making a little bit of headway. Now the next ones, I wanted to switch it up a little bit. I went through private sale to get the next cars. I checked out a couple of different cars. The first one was like an old Lexus. Passed on it. The guy forgot to mention there was like 1,000 other problems with their car that he did not mention in the description. So I went for the second one. It was a Nissan Altima. It was like a 2004 Nissan Altima. And this one did have a couple of things to fix actually, but it wasn't anything crazy. Well, it was a door handle that I had to fix, and it was an O2 sensor swap as well, which was like literally right in front of the car. But yeah, overall it really wasn't too big of a job. I invested about $1,800 all into the car, and I sold it for like $2,700. So I made a quick $900 profit, and that brought us to a total of $3,800 built in the series so far. So I took that extra money that I got, went back to the auction again at the Odessa auction, and I finally ended up getting something. It was a Toyota Camry, and this is one of the times throughout this whole series where it definitely messed me up a little bit because I don't have a crazy amount of mechanical experience. I didn't have a crazy amount of time to really check it out, so I didn't really go through like a really thorough inspection. But I mean, when it went through the lane and everything, it was driving good, it shifted good when I was kind of like quickly shifting through the gears in the auction as well. I wanted to drive home, that's where things got a lot worse. I really couldn't drive it past like 3,000 RPMs. Every time I got to that point, it would just kind of like bog down really quick. And then it also sounded like a street sweeper going through every single street. Eventually I got it home, and I thought that it could potentially just be like an air leak, hopefully coming from the system. But I mean, I diagnosed that. I used like a smoke checking type of system to see if there's any air leaks. That didn't work. So at that point I was like, all right, I guess I have to take it to a mechanic to see if there's anything seriously wrong with it. So I got it back from the mechanic, and they told me, I mean, it wasn't an engine, it wasn't a transmission or anything like that, but it was a clogged cat. And no, not like some cat that's just stuck in the system or something like that. It was nothing like that. It was a catalytic converter that was messed up. And I mean, that's the same catalytic converters that people out here be stealing left and right. So these things are expensive to repair. For that car, I think it was like $1,000 to $1,500 for the cat itself. So of course, there's no reason I'm gonna be swapping that out myself when I already paid dang near that same price just for the car as a whole. So I posted it up to sell as is, and was hoping that I could at least just get my money back. So we're gonna come back to that in a second, because thankfully while that was being sold, I also had enough money gathered up in a series to be able to get another car, also from ACV auctions, and it was a Volkswagen Passat. This is the car that we got for only $1,200 from the auction. It's a 2006 Volkswagen Passat. It only has 148,000 miles on it. It has no mechanical problems at all, but as you can see, it's really dirty and there's a rip in the seats as well. So today is gonna be our day to fix up that rip and get this thing looking real good for sale. So I had a little sewing kit, sewed the leather seats back up together, made that look a lot better. Also popped some hubcaps on there as well, and then list that up for sale, and that actually sold pretty easily. I got a quick $2,000 out of that. So I basically made around like a $750 profit from it. And then right after that, I also finally found someone to buy the Camry as well. I did end up selling it for like $1,300, so I took like a $200 loss out of that car. But I at least had money to be able to reinvest back into the series. At that point, I was at $4,200 in total to be able to reinvest back into the series. So from that point, I was basically like, all right, I think I've had enough of a Vedessa for the time being. So I basically went right to ACV auctions to get the next car. And the next one was very easy to flip. I mean, it was a Ford Edge. I think it was like a 2007 or 2008 Ford Edge. I bought that one for like $2,300, and then it only needed a quick detail, and I sold it for around $3,500 right after. With that one, I really was able to sell within a couple of days from the time that I got it. So that brings us up to a whopping $5,400 in this series so far. I know it's nothing crazy. Okay, we still have a way longer to go just to even get to $25,000, but hey, at least we're off to some good starts so far. I will say these next pair of flips kind of switch things around a little bit though. So the next one that I got was also from ACV auctions. I actually got both of them from ACV auctions. First one was a Hyundai Sonata, and I literally got this one for like $900. So I think this was, well, basically was the second cheapest car that I got along the whole series. And this one looked really nice actually. I mean, it had like a little bit of dents on the driver door, but besides that, I mean, it ran good, sounded good, it didn't have a crazy amount of mileage. Like, this was a really good deal. And the next one that I bought on ACV was a Honda Odyssey, and this is one of the first cars that I got on ACV auctions throughout the series that really caused me a bit of a headache. So this one was just filthy, first of all. I mean, I'm guessing it was probably like, I don't know, some family or something like that, big family that might have owned it, but I mean, it was just stains in the floors, like gum that was like stuck in different parts of the panels inside. Like, the whole interior was just destroyed. It also had an engine code on for like a knock sensor, and then there was actually a point in the description of the listing that also said there was like a noise coming from the engine bay as well. But I'm not gonna lie, I really think that I just kind of jumped on it a little bit too quick. I was just kind of desperate to get something, so I didn't really take the time to like listen to what the engine sounds like and everything from the listing, which usually you could do. So I went there to pick it up in person, and for the most part, I thought everything kind of looked as expected. Like, it was just as filthy as I thought it was. It did look like it did need a good amount of work with cleaning, and you know, it had just that one engine code on as well that I saw. When I opened up the hood and I heard the car running, it was a little concerning, because I felt like at that point, I wouldn't say it was anything like crazy noises coming from the engine bay, but I don't know, it didn't sound like a smooth sounding Honda engine. All right, so now we're just gonna pop the hood, check to see how everything is under here. I will say it is running a little bit rougher, most likely because of the knock sensor, but I'll look a little bit more into that once I get it home. So I got the car home and immediately went to trying to fix that engine code. So swapping out the knock sensor, and that did, from what it looks like, fix that. So just to make sure, and after detailing the car too, I just took the car around for a drive to make sure that the engine code wasn't going to come back. But it was at that time I knew I messed up. So that little noise that I heard in the beginning went to like a loud knocking noise when I was driving the car around. And at that point I was just like, there's really no way I can just sell this for like a regular good condition car price, because usually, I mean, when an engine is knocking, like that's serious internal engine issues at that point. I really didn't even need to take it to a mechanic for that one to know that there was something seriously wrong there. And the funny thing is, I mean, with how it sounded, I mean, for me, I could listen to that and I could quickly see the problem. But I mean, if I posted that up, a lot of people would probably post it up as it is and just sell it for like good condition price, and basically look to just sugarcoat the issue and probably sell it for like a good price still. But I mean, I wasn't trying to like violate somebody and mess someone else up, so I listed it up as it was, basically just hoping to get my money back on that car as well. And of course I highlighted that problem in the listing too. So at that point we were just kind of waiting a little while for the car to sell, which was annoying in itself, but I mean, it is what it is. Now I will say, during that point, as I mentioned, I also had the Hyundai Sonata, and I was able to quickly sell that for $2,300. So I got like around a $1,300 profit after like the $100 that I invested into it also. And then literally right after that, because I was still waiting for the Honda Odyssey to see exactly how long that's gonna take to sell and who would want that, I was like, let me try to just buy another car to just keep everything going. So I got a 2010 Ford Escape for a really good deal also. That one was only 1,800 bucks. Got that from ACV Auctions as well. And with that one, I only needed to do a wheel change for it in a detail. The back left wheel was basically had like some weird looking wheel in the back. So total invested was like 1,900 in total for the new wheel and then some detailing products as well. And then I was able to quickly sell that for like $3,000. And now to come back finally to that Honda Odyssey, which was giving me so much headaches. I finally got someone to buy it, and thankfully I will say, when I bought the Honda, I mean, I was expecting to make some pretty good profit off of it. I bought it around $2,100, and I was really expecting to sell it for like $4,000 or a little bit above $4,000. So, you know, there was a good amount of room where, let's say if someone else bought it, you know, they could still swap out different parts themselves and it would still be an all right deal for them too. So I was able to sell the car, got my $2,100 back, but with everything together, at least that got me up to $7,800. And I was so happy to finally see that Honda going too. And I gotta say, after selling that Honda, I was kind of like, man, I'm really hoping that I could do this. You know, I'm really hoping I could make it all the way to $100,000. And my lack of mechanical experience isn't gonna like really make me end up buying a few lemons to just completely lose my whole progress, because then I know for sure I'm not gonna be making it to $100,000 by the end of 2025. So yeah, I mean, I was a lot more careful after that. And the next flip, it was a pretty cheap little Kia Forte. I bought it really cheap for like 1,200 bucks or 1,300 bucks. That one, I was surprised how many people wanted it when I posted it up. Like, there was so many people hitting me up in the messenger. And I sold that one for a quick like $1,000 profit as well within a few days. Then I ended up going back to private sale, and yeah, I probably wish I would have just stayed at only going to private sale that first time, because this one did not go as smoothly. So I went out, checked out like 3 different cars. The first 2, same type of situation as like the other time when I was going through private sale. Seller basically just making up stuff in the description that was not true when I got there in person. But the third car was nice. It was a van. It was like a Grand Caravan, and it looked like it was going to be a pretty good deal for it. I mean, the guy was willing to come down to like $2,300 for the car, and it only really needed like an EGR valve and then just like a small detail as well. And I did see it in the description of his listing, but he did also mention that the car actually has a lien still on the title. There's not the lien on the car itself. The lien was already paid off, but there was a lien on the title itself. He didn't get a new title showing that the lien had been cleared off, and he didn't have the paperwork there in person yet either. Now, when I got there in person, I mean, as I mentioned, I knew all that stuff, so I was making sure that I was really trying to cut down the price just to kind of like compensate for all that. And I did do my research to make sure that the lien was completely paid off, so I was all good. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave you a couple $100 as a down payment. He was cool about everything, so he let me take the title, he let me take the car. All I had to do was like leave like $200, you know, as a down payment, and then take the car with me home. And of course, he just told me he'd let me know when the paperwork comes so I could just go and pick it up and then leave the rest of the money. But like, let's say, you know, days went by, didn't hear from him. A week went by, you know, he still didn't get the paperwork. 2 weeks went by, like, I think it was like close to 3 weeks that went by. I was still waiting, you know, to see if he got the paperwork or not. And then at this point, I'm like, dang, like I could have probably flipped like 2 or 3 different cars just waiting for this one set of paperwork to come. But finally, after like 3 weeks of waiting, the paperwork finally came in the mail, and I dropped the money off. I picked up the paperwork for the car, and then I finally started being able to do some of the work with the car as well. Because no, I wasn't about to go dropping a bunch of money into parts and stuff like that until I made sure that the paperwork was all good as well. So I ended up investing another $100 into that car just for the parts and everything, and then I sold it for about $3,800. So I made about $1,400 profit off of that one. But that was the longest it took to sell a car throughout the whole series. So yeah, next time I would just pass on it. It definitely was not worth it. But selling that one at least brought us up to over $10,000 in this series. It was about $10,200 built up at that point. Okay, and on that point, it's time to stand up. My butt was starting to hurt, but let's keep everything going. So the next cars I bought was also from ACV Auctions. It was a 2012 Jeep Patriot and a Toyota Sienna that had like 220,000 miles on it. Overall, it's looking good. It does have a car inspection sticker. The only thing to really keep note of is that right there. It's basically the only thing we have to kind of fix up. Again, this one's in very good condition as well. There's not even any rust spots or anything like that with this one. But as I mentioned before, it does also have a check engine light on for the misfire code, and I did check that already, and it still stands to that. So when I got that car and I started getting into the whole job itself, I mean, it actually wasn't too bad. Like, I knocked it out in a couple of hours, spent like $100 in parts and stuff, and I wouldn't definitely not say it's perfect. I am not a professional in that craft, but it was much better than when I first got it. And then the Toyota Sienna, I will say it was a little bit more annoying than I thought to change the spark plugs. I thought it was gonna be like a really quick and easy fix. It ended up taking like a couple of hours to do. I ended up watching a YouTube video to see how to fix it and everything. But yeah, it was definitely not your normal quick and easy spark plug change. But it did at least fix the code that was coming up for it, and I ended up selling both within a week. I sold the Jeep for $3,500, so I made $1,400 profit out of that one. And then the Toyota Sienna sold for $3,800, so I also made $1,400 out of that one as well. And that brought us up to $13,000 built up in this series so far. And the next one, we were on a roll. We bought another Subaru there was a Subaru Outback. It was like a 2013. And that one, I mean, that was probably my easiest flip yet. I mean, it literally needed nothing. Honestly, it didn't even really need a detail. I bought it for $2,400 and ended up selling it for $3,900. So cha-ching, made $1,500 out of that one and brought us up to $14,500 in this series. And this is really where things started to pick up a lot more. So at this point, I could have just been like, all right, I'm gonna take that whole $14,000 and go buying some like really nice car, just blast it all on one specific car. But no, I didn't really want to do that. I'd rather like diversify, get 3 different cars potentially, and not have so much risk of losing a bunch of money on one car as well. But again, I bought it from ACV Auctions, and there has been times in the past, not even just in the series, but even in general, that I've got the car from the auction and the car just wasn't as good as I expected it to be. And this is 3 different chances of that happening. And to add to that, one of those cars was a Nissan Murano that I bought for $2,300. And I gotta say, just being real, I do not have a good relationship with Nissan cars in general. Their CVT transmissions are trash. Usually I would just completely skip on the cars, but it looked like a really good deal for this car, so I was just like, hey, let's just try to go for it. But yeah, I mean, if it was an issue with one of these expensive CVT transmissions, like that would really set things back a pretty good amount. But yeah, I was waiting for that to come. In the meantime, I also ended up getting a Lincoln MKX. I bought that one for like $3,000, and a Hyundai Veloster Turbo. I bought that one for like $4,200, like $4,250. So the Lincoln, when it came, I mean, it really just looked just as good as the listing as well. I mean, it looked like it was kept up very well. It was only like a 1-owner car, so I mean, inside and outside, it basically looked pristine condition as well. And the Honda Veloster that I got was nice too. I'm not even gonna lie, like I was actually kind of contemplating if I should even sell the thing or not. There was even people in my comments like, bro, I probably would have just kept the car. It only had like 80,000 miles on it. It had a manual transmission. Whoever had it before had like a blow-off valve in the car, so you already know I was having some fun driving the car around too. did have an engine code on though. It was for like a small evap leak. A lot of times it would be something like a loose gas cap or a bad gas cap that would fix that. So I ended up ordering an engine cap for it right away. Now at that point, when I had both of those cars, I was still really waiting for the Nissan to come as well. And that's really what got me kind of anxious, because it's a little different now, but at that point ACV had like a weird, something called an arbitration. And with certain cars, you can basically do it where you can arbitrate a car, and if there's something that's not explained in the auction listing that you end up finding when the car comes, then you could arbitrate it and potentially get your money back, or potentially get the seller to cover whatever the fix is. But that car was taking a good while to come. I bought it from like a pretty far distance away. And for ACV auctions, let's say the standard arbitration time was only like 7 days, I believe, at the time. So that was like day 5 that came up, and I was still waiting for the car to even come. So at that point, I was really like, I'm hoping it's not going to end up coming after the arbitration time, and then I'm basically finished at that point. As a quick note, I will say ACV is better now, where regardless of how long it takes for your car to get delivered, you'll have a set arbitration time from that delivery date. But it was different back then. Back to the whole story with the Nissan, the car finally ends up coming. End up taking it for a test drive, and thank God the car was all good. It didn't have any problems shifting through the gears or anything like that. It did just need a really heavy detail. It basically smelled like weed inside the car as well, and it had like these really cheesy looking purple tints in it as well in the car. So I had to make sure I removed that too. At that point, the engine cap came for the Veloster as well. I swapped that out, took care of the code, posted everything up for sale after I got them all ready for sale. Then the Murano sold for $3,800, the Lincoln sold for $5,000, and the Hyundai Veloster sold for $6,500. So that was my first time in this series making over $5,000 in a week. That brought us to about $5,600 in profit in total. And in the series, that got us up to $20,100. So following right after that, I ended up buying 2 cars around the same time. It was a Mercury Mountaineer, I got it for like $2,100, and a Jeep Patriot I bought for $1,800. Thankfully, these were like much easier flips as well. The Mercury, I literally just had to detail it and sold that within a couple days from when I got it. And then the Jeep, the trim was falling off, so I just kind of had to like put the trim basically back onto the car, and everything was all good after that as well. Then with the Mercury, I sold that for $3,000, and with the Jeep, I sold that for $4,000, which brought us up to $23,200 built in the series. So I bought 2 cars. They were a little higher priced, kind of followed along the same process. Wasn't trying to dump all my money into one car, but I bought a Chrysler 300 for $3,100 and a Subaru Legacy for $3,500. And the car already looked good, but just to kind of jazz it up a little more, I threw some 25-inch spinning rims on there just to kind of like make it really pop, you know. And I figured, I mean, if I post it up like that, that thing is going to be flying off the lot with ease. Now let me stop. That definitely did not happen. But instead, just to make it pop a little more, I did end up doing paint correction with the car just to make the blue pop a lot more as well. And at that point, this was kind of the same situation where I was waiting for the next car to come, the Subaru. And when the Subaru came, I just remember I was already out there working on the Chrysler. And when the Subaru first got dropped off, I was like, uh-oh, this thing is looking like a lot dirtier than I expected. Like it had like all these like stains and stuff like that on the paint. I was actually starting to wonder if I could even get the stains out as well and make it in good condition. And it was really making me anxious as like if there's going to be some other big problems that's going to come up with the car that was not announced as well. So right away I ended up taking it for a test drive, and with that test drive it was like a really weird noise that was coming up. And I remember too, I mean just even listening to the whole thing, I mean the car was beeping and it had like this weird whirring noise. Ooh. Okay. Did y'all hear that right there? And honestly, I really thought it was a high chance it could be the transmission of the car itself, because especially that car, I believe there was a CVT transmission in that specific type of car as well. So really it was either that or it was potentially the wheel bearing for the car as well. And I will say with this one, I mean, I bought it from ACV Auctions, and this was a green light car, which basically means that it was a car that I could have done the same thing where if it was a transmission that was a problem, I could have arbitrated it and potentially gave the car back and got my money back. But the truth is, I mean, if I'm doing all that, that's going to take a lot of time. Like the car came from pretty far. I have to wait a good amount of time for them to send the person out, you know, to check out the car, see what's wrong with it, send the car back, and then get my check back to get the money back and stuff. Do all that, it would just be wasting a lot of time. You already know time is of the essence. I'm trying to get to that 100K before 2025 ends. So like, you know, I can't be getting held up on one specific thing like that. But I ended up taking the car home. I lifted the car up in the air and I started to like just do a couple of tests to check if it was the wheel bearing or not. And thank God, again, it was the wheel bearing, it wasn't the transmission. I will say, I mean, taking out the wheel bearing for that car was such a pain. Like, that thing was completely seized on there. I had to do everything short of using like a lightsaber to try to slice that thing out. What ended up finally working was putting like a chisel between the knuckle and just kind of like hammering the thing out. But yeah, at least it wasn't the transmission. But after changing that and seeing that noise was completely gone, I cleaned both of them up, listed them up for sale. I sold the Subaru for $5,500 and the Chrysler for $5,400, which brought me up to $27,300 so far. Now here we are. Yes, we made it past 25K, but as I mentioned, we're still just a quarter of the way to that 100K goal.